Welcome to the AG Next Gen Leaders Podcast, where we encourage, equip, and empower you as a next gen leader to effectively be a disciple of Jesus Christ who makes disciples of Jesus Christ. My name is Holly Davis, and I serve as your host. And with me today is the incredible Kelly Presson. Kelly serves as our National Kidmin Director.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Kelly, you've had a lot of years of experience in both kids and youth ministry. You speak all over the world, the nation, summer camps, and you also direct and lead the Creative Conference.
Yeah,
correct?
the Kidmin Creative Conference.
The Kidmin Creative Conference, which I've seen. I haven't been a part of yet, but I've just seen, your pictures. I love what you're doing. And it's really a part of the reason why I wanted to bring you in today. Kelly, you have such a special gift and anointing to capture, using creativity to capture kids and students' attention using creativity, right? In services. Tell us why that is so important.
Oh, man. Well, I feel like it's crazy important. So I have stories.
Please.
People like stories.
Please.
And then, when you get to be a certain age, Holly, you have a story for everything.
That's exactly
Just saying.
right, yeah.
So I grew up in a small town in Missouri, down the Boot Heel.
Okay.
So way down there in cotton country. And I was an entertainer. I did a lot of entertaining. And so when I started doing outreach ministry for the church, our little small church, kids were coming like literally in droves.
Wow.
We were in the projects, so kids were coming from everywhere, and I'm doing some tricks, some illusions. I'm doing some tricks
Gospel
for them, and we're just
illusions.
having a
Yeah.
big time. Kids are just so excited, like they're like scraping the ceiling. And the minute the word church came out of my mouth, their whole countenance changed.
Really?
Yep. It's like, we've been to church. It's sit down, shut up, right? Sit down, be quiet. And it wasn't for them. And right then I determined in my mind, like, wow, God is not boring.
That's right.
He's not boring. It takes people like you and I to make God boring. Let's be honest.
Right.
And I just don't ever want to be guilty of making God boring, especially to a child, but to a teen as well. In my whole career, pretty much did outreach ministry. And those young people, whether they're kids or teenagers, they don't have to be there. Nobody's making them come.
Right.
And so first I want to say there is no substitute for the presence and the power of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Zero substitute for that. But I need to capture their attention and hold their attention in a way that I can get them to the presence of the Lord. I want to make sure they want to be there and that they're not bored and like, I'm not going back.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's just crazy important.
So let's define, because, a lot of people, we can say, let's have creative elements in our services, right? Let's help, or in an outreach or wherever we're doing ministry. But help define for us what a creative element in a service or an outreach, what does that look like? What does that mean?
Well, a creative element is created, first of all, to capture attention, but to make your message visual, to make it sticky, make it something that they retain. I love, especially with kids, it really works with teens as well, but especially with kids, I like to use everyday objects that they're going to see. And so when they see it, they relate to the message that we shared. It's supposed to enhance your message and make retention rate go up. Things you see, we have all the statistics we'll get into in a few minutes, but
Sure.
The things that you see make a big difference in what you retain.
So can you give us an example of one of your favorite creative elements, moments in a service?
Wow, there's just so many
Yeah.
over the years, obviously. Before I go there, I want to say this. We have to remember that the attention span of a child is 5 minutes maximum. 5 minutes. And so I do this thing called Hydrate Iron series,
Yep.
and one of them is called Next Level Communication. And we spend a couple months on this. But most Bible lessons are 15 minutes long, 12 minutes long. So if a kid's attention span is only 5 minutes, what 8 minutes do you not want them to hear?
Ooh,
Think about that.
that's
That's
good.
huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. And so that means you've got to do something to break it up. You got to do something. Maybe it's a video on the screen. Maybe it's an object lesson. You pull out something out of a bag they don't know, because kids love mystery, but they also love mastery, right? So they love to see things over and over again,
Yeah.
but they like to be surprised as well. And so you've got to do something to kind of reset your voice, or you're going to have 8 minutes of a Bible lesson that's super important that they didn't even really hear.
Wow. That's really
so
good.
one of my favorites, gosh, I've done so many over the years. One of them I stole from a guy you probably know, Michael Rowan. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember Michael Rowan.
Yeah.
Back in youth, when I was doing youth ministry in Arkansas. Again, I got this idea from him, so I'll give him credit. But we had a fish tank. You'd get in trouble for this today. By the way, there's a lot of things we used to do in youth ministry that you better not do anymore.
That's exactly right, my friend.
But we had
That's
a fish tank, and I had a whole bunch of goldfish. You've probably seen this.
Like real
goldfish,
okay.
and I had rigged up a tray. You couldn't see it on a piece of fishing line, and we were talking about winning lost people. And the fish are all swimming around; they're happy, right? And then I pulled up that tray, and they're all coming up out of the water, and I threw them all off on the floor. Again, people would go crazy for that now, like you'd be in trouble.
Sure.
But you talking about an object lesson nobody ever forgot. Kids just sat there, and a lot of them were not church kids. They coming in on the buses, and they just sat there with this look and they were like, their eyes are getting big, and they were screaming. And I said, "What are you guys waiting for?" And they come screaming out of their seats. There's like 120 of them grabbing fish, and they're throwing them in that water, trying to save them, trying to rescue them.
What a great idea.
Oh, it's an incredible thing because, people are dying, lost without Jesus. And we're like, yeah, so what? No big deal. But man, when you saw it, and the truth of the matter is, the part that we probably shouldn't even say is, there were a couple fish that didn't make it. And man, what a point that you have there. You waited too late. While you were sitting there wondering, should I? Should I say something? Should I do something? Should I get involved? I'm not sure. Do I have? They didn't make it.
I mean, what an incredible idea.
Yeah.
What a really
Don't do it, though, because somebody will be really mad at you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fish tanks, so youth ministry, lots of years of experience. One of the things that we would do is a heaven and a hell series.
Oh, yeah.
And so for the heaven series, we had our own youth room, so we could do this. I think I went to Joann Fabrics and bought, I don't even know, Kelly, how many yards.
A disgusting amount
of gold, like glittery.
Heaven's gates and hell's flames. I hear it.
Bought the stapler, and I mean, ceiling to floor, it covered the entire stage.
I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
With gold. The kids didn't know. They knew we were calling it a heaven or a hell series.
Yeah. And that's an illustration in itself.
But they walked in and they just, their eyes just, lit up. And then for the hell series, of course, we had the demons, we had the face mask, I even had a fish tank with a skull in the middle of it, and I got a tarantula.
Oh, my. Yeah.
Again, don't do this now.
No, there's things we've done that you just can't do.
This was in the early
It sounds
2000s.
great, but you can't do it now.
You cannot do it now. Luckily, I had a top over it, but I had that spider. And so while we're preaching, about hell, that tarantula is crawling around, but, right, they'll never forget it. Creative elements. So what is the science, right? Because we want to back it up. We don't want to just say,
no, I agree.
Do creative elements for creative sake.
Yep.
But what's the science behind helping our kids and our students remember the big idea or the main point of the message?
Well, it depends on how geeky you want to get.
Okay, let's get there.
We could geek out right now, and then I can bring it down to a synopsis.
Let's
all
do
right?
both.
So, according to the Journal of Educational Research, all right, there you go. Don't take it from me.
There you go.
All right, a student retains about 50% of what they see and hear, compared to only 20% of what they hear only.
Okay, break that down.
All right, so for instance, if you spend however long, you spend all your time praying, seeking the Lord, putting together a message, whether it's for kids or teenagers, right, or young adults, or adults as far as that goes.
That's right.
If you spend all your time doing that, and then you get up there and all you do is talk to them, science says 20% is what they're going to remember. Wow. And I'm going to tell you, I work way too hard, and you do too, for 20% retention.
That's right.
Way too hard.
That's right.
Simply by adding a visual, it goes to 50%.
Wow.
Which is much better. And it goes from there. Let me keep going. The Journal of Experimental Psychology says that students who learn through both auditory and visual, they score 25% higher on comprehension later. Okay, on those tests. It's a testing thing, right? But it continues on. A study in the British Journal of Educational Technology found that multimedia presentations, which most everyone does, combined with auditory and visual elements, improve learning outcomes by 30%.
Wow.
Another 30. But here's where the kind of rubber meets the road. I think you get it. They come from reputable sources. Let me break it down for you. Let me give it to you on the easy to digest. Here it is. We already said that a kid's attention span is 5 minutes at the max. And that's not just kids. That's really everybody.
Absolutely.
You know that book, The Elimination of Hurry? Have you read it?
I have not.
It says that a goldfish now has a longer attention span than humans. A goldfish.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
So anyway, here's what it says. We remember 10% of what we hear. So people watching this are going to remember 10% of it, all right? But we're going to do some stuff maybe in a minute. But they're also, they're going to remember 30% of what they see. So 10% of what they hear, 30% of what they hear. If you combine the two, 50%. But here's where it really gets great. The statistics say that if we hear it, see it, and say it, 70%.
Wow.
So if you'll notice, most all of your kids' ministry curriculum, they have you repeat something. Now, here's really where the rubber meets the road. 90% if they see, hear, say, and do it. So that's why you get your body involved. That's why you get to, like in kids' ministry, we'll just talk about that. So I would do a big idea. We're preparing one for camp. Somebody, sacrifice something for your freedom. So we're saying it, they're hearing it, they're seeing it, and they're doing it 90%. And I can tell you from experience, when I was in Michigan, once a year we do our camp service, kids' camp service for the adults. And like we had an incredible pastor, been there 30 years, like phenomenal pastor. People would say it's my favorite service of the year. I'm not missing it for anything.
Wow.
And it was just because it was full of all these creative elements. And the people would, a year later, could tell me what the big idea was. Grown adults. They'd say last year's big idea was, and they'd do it.
Wow.
90%.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, Holly, most of your really well-known lead pastors, they're all using creative elements.
Absolutely.
A lot of them have people writing them for them, people building sets for them. They realize that 20%, now who wants to work that hard for 20%?
Right.
Not me.
Right. I think back on kids camp days in southern Missouri, and
Come on, Somo.
Let's go. I can still remember. It was a black light illustration, right? And it was the color book where it had the different colors, the gospel message in the different colors. And, they would turn the page and I can't remember what the first color was, if it was green.
Yeah.
But I can...
The wordless book's what you're talking about.
Yes. I can still remember it to this day.
Yeah.
And
you're like 25 years old.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. But giving science, behind it is important. And, just kind of breaking it down for us. So I would say, looking at the five senses, what you're saying, I think that's probably right on the same.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love investing in the five senses, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But we've done a lot of talking. We haven't done anything visual yet.
Okay.
So I want to encourage people, because I know there's people out there saying, wow, because I run into it all the time. I'm just not creative.
Right.
That's not who I am. And can I tell you, that's just a lie. It's an absolute lie. You may not feel creative. When I first went into youth ministry, I never had even been in youth group. My little church didn't have one. It was me and this one guy. That was it, right?
That was it. Yeah.
So anyhow, I was out praying and walking around the school, around the high school. It was closed. And I was just praying, walking around it. And I was just really complaining. I was doing more complaining than praying, right? God, I'm just not creative, blah, 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 blah. And again, we were doing bus ministry. These kids didn't have to be there. And the Lord said, just stopped me. He said, look, he said, do you not recognize that you serve the God of all creation? Well, what's the answer to that? Yeah. He said, look around you. Everything you see, I created. Don't you think if you asked me for a creative thought that I'd be well equipped to give you one? Well, there's only one answer to that. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, I just asked the Lord for creative ideas. But what I've found, a little illustration, what I've found is creativity is a lot like a muscle.
So hold on, let me stop you. So let me make sure, if you're listening to this on Spotify or in iTunes, make sure you go check this out on YouTube, right? So they can see this illustration.
So they'll remember more.
That's right.
So it's like a muscle.
Okay.
It's a muscle. And I pray and ask God to give me creative ideas. But the more that it happens, the more that you use this, much like any muscle. I know your husband really likes to work out.
Yes.
He's a big dude. I'm afraid of him. Watch this. As you work that muscle and you pray and ask the Lord to help you, I want you to see what's going to happen to that creativity in you. That creativity in you, it's not going to stay the where it was. You might feel like you weren't very creative. I didn't feel like I was either. And now people would say, that guy, he's super creative.
Absolutely.
It's because I kept working that muscle. I kept talking to the Lord about it. And what happened to it, Holly? It just grows and grows and grows and grows. This is an object lesson that I use when I talk about creativity.
Wow.
Because God will
That's
take
cool.
your little hello and make it into something much.
That's so cool.
Isn't that cool?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Leave it there on the table
Yeah, just leave
so
it there.
people can see
We'll
it.
leave it there.
That's really cool. So walk us through, Kelly, what what that might look like. So 5 minutes, right, is what you said. So as the kids pastor, youth leader is trying to put together, their message, walk us, what does that look
it's
like?
good.
Yeah.
So
us some
first of all,
practical.
obviously you got to pray. And that's not just cliche. You
Right.
have to pray.
Right.
God's got ideas. And I love to, you have to start early. If you're going to be creative, this is the part that really gets you hung up. Creativity takes time. And so you have to start early, because if God gives you an idea on Saturday night, you may not have time to put it together.
That's good.
Right?
That's good wisdom.
So you have to start early. Right. I like to, as crazy as it sounds, now I was full time. I get that. It's a difference. But I would read over my lesson on Monday before I left the office. Made sure I had just read through it. Didn't necessarily study, just read through it. What that does, it gives the Holy Spirit all week for you to see things, to think things.
Right.
That would really work. Or if it's on a Wednesday, start again on Monday. Read through what you're going to do. Start, have an idea what you're going to speak about. And it's amazing how the Lord will show you things. But then, I just use these words all the time. If you're in my Hydrate Iron group, some of you guys are watching, you'll hear it all the time. Illustrate, illustrate, illustrate. Okay. I use it all the time. It's not hard. It doesn't have to be expensive. I don't even do crafts, I don't. But this past Sunday, I was teaching at kids' church and at my home church here. And we were talking about, I think it's from Ephesians 5, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, we were talking about, putting off the old man, putting on the new man, putting off lying and putting on truth, Yeah. And I didn't just get up there and tell that. There was one little picture, maybe two in the curriculum. I'm going to speak for 12 minutes. Yeah. What did I tell you? I'm not going to have 8 minutes.
Right.
That they don't hear. And so I just went to Walmart, got some poster board, made some simple signs, and taped some cord on it. And when I had kids come up, which immediately gets people's attention.
Absolutely.
I put lying on them, and I'd be like, the Lord says, if you lie, it's time to take that off. And the other side just had truth on it. I did that 3 times. Super simple. It took me 5 minutes to make those signs, but it made a huge difference in the engagement of the crowd, also in the retention of what we talked about. So I talked about that a lot. That maximum 5 seconds. You've got to remember that, or 5 minutes, excuse me. You have fun with kids. Kids are concrete thinkers.
Yeah.
Kids are concrete thinkers, and youth aren't so old that they don't get the pun, right?
Right.
They still like dad jokes, as long as you don't use too many of them. But I love to. I lost my thought there. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, having fun with it. Yeah.
So talk to the youth pastor.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get out of kids ministry, and we, if we're not careful, we can just give a message without bringing those creative elements. So talk to the youth pastor really quick, and give him or her some ideas for creative elements in their messages.
Oh, that's great. So youth pastors, again, you have young people in there. Some of them have heard it all. They could preach your sermon for you.
Right.
I specifically think of pastors' kids.
Right.
Some pastors' kids, they've been in church so much, they've been in church their whole life, and some of them are a little jaded, and they've all heard it, and they've heard it. So why wouldn't you bring it to them in a way that captures their attention? I think of Jeannie Mayo, who's been around longer than I have.
Yes.
And has been an example to so many of us.
So many.
I've been to her services, and there's a lot of drama involved. Or there's, she'll have soliloquies. She has these things that draw you in. Video. Video is an easy way. Yeah. I don't want to lean on video. I don't want to do my teaching for me. But man, it's great to drive points home. Back to some of the earlier things. One of the things we did a sex series, right, in youth, which we need to be doing.
Absolutely.
We called it sex ed. We had big letters made like these, great, but they were bigger than that, all over the stage, and it was very interesting. And we had tremendous attendance, because everybody wanted to be like, we haven't heard about this at church. We haven't heard these things.
Sure.
We had this is nothing new. I'm sure I got the idea from somebody else. We had a mock wedding, where the bride was spotless and one where she
Wow.
wasn't. We did a lot of things like that, but kids were engaged. I mean, they were very engaged. And years later, they could tell you about it.
So, story, right? We also we're doing a dating series in youth ministry. And so I think part of also a creative element is giving, whether it's some sort of a token, something
Yes,
that
I
they
love
can take
tokens.
with them. And so what we did, because True Love Waits was really big in the early 2000s, that ceremony, young ladies, young men with their parents. And so we wanted to be different, right? And so we created, and this is when, I can't even remember what the computer program was, not PowerPoint. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we created business cards. And on the front of the business card, it had a V on it. We called it their V card. It was their virginity card,
Oh,
right?
my gosh.
And then the back of it, they had to sign their name. And basically it was, making a commitment to wait, to abstain until marriage. And so again, this is early 2000s. We had one of our students who, obviously, he was out of youth ministry, a young man, and when he got married, he handed us, and this was probably 10 years later.
That's amazing, though.
Because he was in middle school when we did it. He handed us on his wedding day his V card, but just those type of things, that help our students. Whether it's through their five senses, whether it's getting them up and doing something kinesthetically, right, to help them remember and engage. And Kelly, you are one of the absolute best. I'm going to make sure that I link on this episode to all of your creative conferences that you're doing.
There's one coming up in Kansas City.
In August, right?
Yeah, in August.
So if you're in the area, because what are they going to learn there at these conferences?
Well, there's so many things. There's going to be gospel illusions. There'll be characters. We have balloon animals, that kind of thing, puppets. It just goes on and on, like just anything creative that you can think of.
So I'll make sure I put a link to those.
Object lessons, obviously.
So what are some other resources that kids, youth pastors, what comes to mind? Immediately what comes to mind for me is KidMin Roadmap,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Brand new, changing the face of kids ministry, right?
Yes.
Free resource.
Hard to beat free.
Hard to beat free. But inside KidMin Roadmap, we'll have tons of resources, illustrations. And it's all right there for you,
yes.
right?
Well, we want to make it a roadmap, so it takes you where you need to go, right? You don't have to take major detours here or there. Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any other resources that come to mind?
Yeah, again, it sounds like, promoting our own thing, but the Hydrate Iron course, the people who've done it, especially the Next Level Communication, would tell you, we do creative exercises. We spend months, like for instance, they'll send in their lesson plan for that coming Sunday, and the whole group, we will creatively take it apart. We'll come up with more ideas than you could possibly do. You wouldn't want to do them all, but it's an exercise to get your creative muscle to grow. Super fun.
And you want to do those brainstormings in community, which your Iron group for Hydrate. So I'll make sure I put a link to that as well. Hydrate is available for kids pastors and youth pastors. And so take advantage of working together, learning from each other. Kelly, are there any, and I know we said it at the beginning, right? We use the illustration of the goldfish. We can't do that today, but is there anything, because sometimes we can, especially the creatives are like, I want to bring, some kind of a rigging in and zip line in. Is there anything that you would maybe say, wisdom says, maybe stay away from this?
Well, there's several things really.
Yeah.
I would say the main thing is keep the message the main piece.
That's good. That's
because
really
I have
good.
seen people who did such a creative job that the message was lost.
It was lost.
People had a lot of fun, and it was great. But I'm like, well, what was the what was the point? Like, what was the message?
That's good wisdom.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And that's just number one. It's meant to enhance, not take away.
That's good.
So the minute that you take away from the message, then you've got a problem. So that would be first and foremost. Then another thing, and it kind of mentioned it with that whole sex ed thing we did. I can't tell you how many parents wanted to come.
Oh.
And so if you're in our pastor kind of interceded in that.
Sure.
But like if you're going to do something, if you're going to talk about something that could be questionable or just something that parents maybe haven't fully
Sure.
vetted with their kids
Right.
already, it's very important that you get that word out and
good
let the parents
wisdom.
know what the content is going to be. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for problems,
Yeah.
and you're setting your pastor up to have to deal with problems.
That's really good
And you don't want to
wisdom.
do that.
You do not want to do
And
that.
then, obviously elements. We have to be very careful. There's some well-documented cases of people using things in their service that got out of hand. Like, for instance, years and years ago, I used to use pyro. I didn't have a pyro license, but I used it,
Wow.
But then there was a time that I was really afraid. There was once I was very scared. Thank God nothing happened, but I think we have to use a lot of wisdom that, especially we have a room full of minors.
Right.
We have to use a lot of wisdom on what we're willing to do, how close we're going to have minors involved, just on and on.
That's really
and
good.
you don't have to do all that to have fun.
Right.
Like, you don't have to do all that to have some incredible illustrations. You don't have to do those things.
Such good wisdom. And this really is why I wanted to bring you on, Kelly. One, because you are the best of the best.
I don't know about all that.
So, Troy went on the mission field,
Yeah.
a couple months ago.
That was awesome.
And he called you, Kelly, you are the best of the best. You just bring so much creativity. So as we wrap up, is there anything else that you would want to just maybe talk on that we didn't
No,
touch
it's good.
on?
It's a good question. So here's what I would say. There's a lot of people that you can watch, whether it's YouTube or whatever, who are creatives. And they may not be preaching, but you can take thoughts and ideas from them. Like, there's some famous, I hate to even use the word, but there's some famous clowns, not necessarily wearing makeup, just famous people who like Laurel and Hardy and people like that, watching how they use their bodies to bring in the crowd, to catch the crowd, to grab their attention is a great way. Another thing, I actually learned this from T.D. Jakes. T.D. Jakes is one of my favorite people to hear preach. But what I learned from him is when I'm putting together a message for kids, I want to try to put myself there. Like, if I was there, if I was where Jonah was going to be swallowed, right?
Yeah.
If I was there, what would I have seen and what would I have heard? And then I want to try to bring those things
Really
with
good.
me as much as possible. Let me give you, we got just a couple of minutes. Let me bring you this, because you talked about the five senses. This is a really good one, and something that I teach when I go places. But so if you're going to talk about Jonah and the whale, I am definitely going to bring the lights down, and I'm going to teach from like a battery operated candle. Because again, I want to avoid fire, but I'm going to have a battery operated candle. Kids are immediately like, because the lights are down. You could use a spotlight, but I don't want to use a candle, maybe a flashlight. I'm gonna have the kids leaning in. I'm gonna have some whale sounds playing.
That's really good.
I speak whale. Anyway, I'm gonna have some whale sounds playing in the background because I'm trying to take them there.
So
what would it have been like? I'm gonna have a couple of cans of sardines. Because you know how bad they stink. Can you imagine what it smelled like in the belly of a big fish or whale? It had to stink like crazy, right?
Yeah.
I might wrap some green crepe paper around myself like seaweed, right? But I am most definitely going to squirt kids with salt water.
Yeah.
Because now this touch is involved, and I'm going to have them taste it. Because salt water, they're going to have tasted it. And then the last but not least, this is kind of gross, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to vomit some kid onto dry land, guaranteed. I'll probably vomit 2 or 3 because they're going to want to go. They're going to want to do it. But you know what that does?
Yeah.
They're going to leave that place having been in the story, not just told a story.
Yeah.
They're kind of been there. And I mean, again, none of that was hard. Think about
Yeah.
it. None of that was hard. Didn't take a lot. Didn't even take a lot of time. Just taught some thought.
Okay, so I'm going to hit you with this. Okay, and maybe you've done this.
Let me straighten up.
But let's do quick fire real quick.
Oh,
okay,
boy.
so let's do. I'm trying to think of a good story in the Bible. Ooh, okay. So let's do Pentecost.
Pentecost Sunday.
Let's do.
We just had Pentecost Sunday.
We did. Let's do. The disciples are in the upper room,
Right.
And Acts 2, right? It unpacks for us.
Yeah.
Sight, sound.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Oh man. So like immediately what I'm thinking is, I'm probably gonna put I'm thinking of get some little pillows and putting them around in a circle and just getting a few of the kids up to set because they were obviously in that place all together.
Yep.
It was 120, right? But I'm not gonna have 120. I'm just gonna have a few of them up there. I'm gonna have some sound effects, wind blowing, things shaking, and then I'm not gonna use actual fire, but I'm probably gonna get some paint sticks because you can get them free at Lowe's. Just made a big commercial there. I don't know if we could do that.
There you go.
But anyway, you get free paint sticks and just put little fire things on them. I'm going to have a blaze on the screen with the sound of it blazing. And then, I'm going to speak in tongues,
so
right? I'm
cool.
going to speak in tongues.
That's so cool.
I'm definitely going to do that.
That's so
Again,
cool.
those things aren't hard.
Yeah.
Just a little forethought.
Well, and what you're speaking to is, maybe that bivocational, that part-time kids, youth pastor, those are things that just takes a few minutes.
Get your kids involved, though.
Yeah.
The Sunday before, you could have some of those things and have them cut them out.
Yeah.
Have them, they could help you prepare. And they would love doing it. Because now they're not just listening to your message, they were a part of putting it together.
This is just so good, not just for kids, youth, or young adults, but even, for the lead pastor, just trying to, get your people more engaged to create a moment for them, right, that they can walk away from. Kelly, this has been so good.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so, so much. I will make sure that I link to this episode, KidMin Roadmap, Hydrate, creative conferences. Make sure you're working together, right? Brainstorming. I hear, community and all of those things can help capture those moments, capitalizing on those creative elements in service. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you
so much. So thank you for joining us today. We definitely hope that you'll join us for another impactful episode on growing as a next-gen leader. Jesus called us to make disciples of him. So be a disciple-making leader who makes disciples of Jesus Christ. We'll see you on the next episode.